Alrighty, hey there everyone. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. I'm Lexi Eve, and welcome to another lecture on Liber ABA, Magic Book 4. Today we're going into Part 2, Chapter 5, and this is all about the holy oil. As I've stated in my previous video on the scourge, the dagger, and the chain, the holy oil isn't listed on the magician's tables under magical weapons, but I would place it on Shin as spirit. So that's path 31-bis, or negative bis. Of course, then it depends on what kind of oil is in the holy phial. For every scent and plant from which it could be made has properties that could place it all over. Lavender oil could be yesod, while frankincense could be tiferet. Though within this chapter Crowley prescribes Abramelin oil as the holy oil, so that is both mercurial and solar. That could be in a range of spots from Tifereth to Hod, and even the path of Beth. But as a magical weapon upon the altar, to me it is spirit, for Sol receives direct influence of Kether through the path of Gimel, and is the only sphere below the abyss connected directly to the highest, Kether. Crowley begins this chapter, quote, "The holy oil is the aspiration of the magician. It is that which consecrates him to the performance of the great work. And such is its efficacy, that it also consecrates all the furniture of the temple, and the instruments thereof. It is also the grace of chrism, for this aspiration is not ambition, it is the quality bestowed from above. For this reason the magician will anoint first the top of his head, before proceeding to consecrate the lower centers in their turn." End quote. Just in this opening paragraph, the B666 has given us a lot to chew on. Let's break it down piecemeal. When it comes to magical weapons, I will say again what bears repeating. They are all extensions of the magician, the ideals of various parts of one's being in the highest sense. Thus they should each and every one be consecrated in a separate ritual for each new magical weapon prior to using it. If you're in a magical order, you will be told what weapons you should procure for each grade, so that when you become a neophyte of Malkuth, you make and consecrate your paten. The Zealoter of Yesod gets their dagger or sword, the Philosophus of Hod their cup, and the Practicus of Netzach their wand. If you are not in an order, but are practicing the great work, you will need these weapons and more as you progress through yoga and magic, and should definitely consecrate each in a ritual one at a time. You are making the weapons a part of yourself spiritually. So you see, the holy oil which consecrates all of your weapons binds yourself to the ideal of the weapon. The paten, your body, in perfect health. The sword, your intellect perfectly disciplined. The cup, emotional stability. And the wand, your passions and will, fine-tuned and set upon your goals of union with single-pointedness. The great work is the process of turning lead into gold. In essence, attaining knowledge and conversation with the holy guardian angel, crossing the abyss, and achieving union with all things seen and unseen in Kether. With the weapons consecrated to that end, performing the great work, you should always be bringing down the light from the highest point down to where you are at that moment in an attempt to refine your being, reducing you to know things step by step. As I said upon opening this video, the holy oil can range from Abramelin to Jerusalem to near any other substance suitable. I neglected to mention that you can also use the elixir vitae from a certain point of view, that being the sexual fluids produced and collected and mixed in a particular way. Personally, semen and menses are the best, although vaginal and anal secretions work well too. They must be charged with the light via the genitals whilst being produced, and should have the intention to consecrate whatever weapon you will in that operation charged into them at the moment of orgasm as well. This process requires acute focus of the mind upon that end at hand, and any fleeting thoughts can seriously corrupt the operation. If you are not trained in dhyana, you run severe risks of harming yourself or just spoiling the whole operation. I will also note that when using sexual fluids for consecration, I personally mix 1 part Abramelin oil for every 2 parts of secretion. The holy oil in this way connects directly to Atu 9 the Hermit, which is why in the Thoth Tarot there is a single male seed on the lower left-hand corner of the card. In alchemy, Virgo, which corresponds with the hermit, is the archetype of striving for purity and perfection through logical analysis and practical integration. This is par for the course with the manner in which the holy oil is applied during consecration of your weapons. The hermit himself represents the ideal of the magician towards the end of their great work. They have perfected the temple of the Holy Ghost and guide others on the path. Unlike hermits under the thralls of the slave gods, in the Lima, the Book of the Law gives a description of hermits of the new aeon in chapter 2, verse 24, quote, "Behold, these be grave mysteries, for there are also of my friends who be hermits. Now think not to find them in the forest or on the mountain, but in beds of purple caressed by magnificent beasts of women with large limbs and fire and light in their eyes, and masses of flaming hair about them. There shall ye find them. Ye shall see them at rule at victorious armies, at all the joy. And there shall be in them a joy 1,000,000 times greater than this." End quote. And this confirms to my mind all the symbolism surrounding the holy oil in sex magic. Crowley continues, quote, "This oil is of a pure golden color, and should burn and thrill through the body with an intensity as of fire." End quote. This symbolism is that of the sun, the highest physical representation of the divine light, also of Shin, fire and spirit. Thus, the holy oil symbolizes the highest, or most inward, of the magician, Hadit, which, quote, "wishes to unite the lower with itself," end quote. This lowest being the Nefesh Shekinah, the princess of the tarot that will become the queen once united with her lover, the angel, and raised up to her throne in Bina, thence becoming the mother. Crowley goes on to give us the symbolism of Abramelin oil, and based on its components, which is the holy oil, as I've stated, and I think it best to simply quote him in full. So I'll do that. Quote, "This oil is compounded of 4 substances." Now, 4 substances, I just want to note, 4 is Yod He Vav He, tetragrammaton, and sigma 1 through 4 equals 10. 10 is the perfect number of Pythagoras. So just keep that in mind, that Abramelin oil is composed of 4 substances. 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 equals 10, which is the perfect number. The basis of all is the oil of the olive. The olive is traditionally the gift of Minerva, the god of wisdom, the Logos. In this are dissolved 3 other oils: oil of myrrh, oil of cinnamon, oil of galangal. The myrrh is attributed to Bina, the Great Mother, who is both the understanding of the magician and that sorrow and compassion which results from the contemplation of the universe. The cinnamon represents Tifereth, the sun, also the sun as in child's son, in whom glory and suffering are identical. The galangal represents both Kether and Malkuth, the first and the last, the one and the many, since in this oil they are one. These oils taken together represent therefore the whole tree of life. The 10 Sephiroth are blended into the perfect gold." End quote. Now, also important to note on the holy oil, unlike most liquids, oil does not easily evaporate. It remains on surfaces exposed to the air for a very long time, merely getting sticky but not dry. After all of your magical weapons are consecrated, and if you are using them consistently, you will continuously spread the oil all over everything that you touch within the temple, quote, "a glistening film over every object of the temple," end quote. And this film will reflect the light of the magical lamp, which I will speak about the lamp in its own chapter. But just keep in mind that everything this holy oil gets on is going to reflect the light of the lamp, the divine light, or the symbolism of the divine light. The chapter of the holy oil ends with 2 interesting things to note about it. Firstly, quote, "The phial which contains the oil should be of clear rock crystal, and some magicians have fashioned it in the shape of the female breast, for that is the true nourishment of all that lives. For this reason also it has been made out of mother of pearl and stoppered with a ruby." End quote. Now secondly, there is a note to the second to last paragraph of the chapter, which takes us to Editor's Note 45 in the back of the book. This note refers us to the Bible, the Book of Kings, chapter 17, verses 9 through 16. In these lines of the Bible, Elijah is instructed to meet a widow in Zarephath of Sidon, and that she will feed him. So he ventures, and although she has only a single jar of flour and another single jar of oil, she makes them both bread, despite the fact she claims she has not enough and her children will starve. But After they are all fed, the jars, she realizes, will never run out. Much like how Yahshua fed the massive crowd on fish and bread that never ran out. There is something about the river of Sidon I can't quite recall, and I thought it may connect with the upper portion of the Tree of Life, but upon searching through my notes, I can't find the reference. So I'm just mentioning it in passing and am forced to move on. Now, this symbolism of the widow making the bread from the Book of Kings is the manna, the philosopher's stone in alchemy, the inward light, the most center point of one's being. That the holy oil keeps spreading and spreading throughout the temple, and whatever the magician touches will get this oil on it, creating an ever-expanding film. The holy oil then is symbolic of mana, the nourishment of the magician, the light which sustains their being forever. This same light is the milk of the stars, the light from the breast of new wheat, which, in the same manner, nourishes the innermost of the magicians, sustaining their body and soul. Love is the law, love under will. This is my chapter, this is my take on chapter 5, the holy oil. I hope you enjoyed. Stay tuned. I'm going to be making a video on chapter 6 as soon as possible. So, cheers.